Today's topic is a topic that involves sexuality. It's not an open topic among most circles. The thing is, sex happens to everyone. It involves everyone. And it's so ingrained in society. And yet, why don't we talk about it? It just behooves me. It behooves me that we don't. Why? Why can't we talk about sex? It's the one thing that happens to everyone, and yet it's the one thing we don't talk about. And that's one of the things I have against modern day church. Intimacy begins when you know somebody completely. That includes their faults. That includes all the bad things they do, the bad ideas they have, the things that deviate from the norms of society. Once you know a person completely in that way, you truly feel as though you have a real intimate relationship with them. But when you go to a church, you are no longer able to be intimate with anyone that you don't know, or anyone there, most of the time, because you're trying to put on your best face, your best look. You caught me right at sunset. It's gone a bit dark, so I had to do something about the lighting. So the church is a place you put on your best face, you wear your best clothes, and most people try to seem as nice as they possibly can on the exterior. Everyone's giving each other a pat on the back, shaking hands, offering hugs. But usually that kindness doesn't extend outside of the church. And yes, I can say that from experience. And it's sad because I usually experience a love and kindness outside of the Christian circle that the Christians themselves don't offer up. It seems like whatever the Christians give, they always expect something in return. And there's always the design of wanting to have that person become a Christian if they're not. So you always have it in your head, are they being nice to them just so that they could become Christian? And why do they want them to become Christian? Do you want someone to become a Christian because you want them to be like you? Or do you truly fear for their afterlife, fear for their life right now? I'd like to talk about my very first encounters with sex. Now, as a kid, you're always encountering it, but you don't really realize it. I mean, it's just part of the culture. You see it on TV commercials, magazine ads. Sex pervades, but it's not in an obvious way, especially when you're a kid. I've talked before about how I moved from Canada when I was 7 to Thailand, and I spent 4 years in Thailand before returning to Canada. But in Thailand, sexuality is also not an open thing, but it's there, and it's really there. When I was 8 years old, I really liked to watch other kids playing Street Fighter on the arcade games. I rarely got the chance to play. My parents didn't often give me money to play those games. So I liked Street Fighter, and I had a little bit of pocket money, and I bought a comic book that involved Street Fighter characters. The first story in this comic book involved Chun-li and Guile. Chun-li is the Chinese girl who's very attractive, and Guile is the American soldier with long blonde hair sticking out. And I read this story and I felt something strange about it at first. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I know I felt something because sexuality starts at such a young age. Well, my mother read the book, and she had been learning some Thai, so she could understand it a bit. It was in Thai, it was not in English. I couldn't understand the words at all. But apparently, the story involved Guile raping Chun-li. It didn't show anything obviously, but I do believe it showed the facial expressions, and just that. I was too young to understand it, but my mom tried to explain to me as best she could. I felt extremely guilty. I felt extremely sinful. I felt like I had done something terrible. And she told me that there were evil spirits with that book, and that we had to burn the book to get rid of the evil spirits that came with it. I was nodding my head in agreement completely. Burn that book. I couldn't believe I had read such filth. So we made a fire and we burned it. We burned it. And it felt good after burning it. felt like had been redeemed to a certain extent for what I had done wrong, which I hadn't known it was wrong, but I felt really bad anyways. I wouldn't encounter anything overtly sexual again until returning to Canada during grade 6 when I was 12 years old. And this is a bit of a comical story. My first day there, I met up with two people, my best friend to be, Jonathan Sum, and this guy named Jeremy. And during lunchtime, they started talking about Playboy. I don't know what was happening. I think it was just mentioned, and I said, "What's a Playboy?" And they looked at me and kind of snickered. This guy doesn't know what a Playboy is. I didn't know what it was. And they said it was a magazine. I said, "What kind of magazine?" And they just wouldn't tell me. So I tried to think about it, and Playboy. Play is like playing with toys. Boy, I'm a boy. Boys like toys. So I thought it might have been one of those, like, have you ever heard of the Sears catalogs? Like these big fat magazines with all the items you can buy at the department store? I thought it would be like one of those, but just with the toys they sold, like a catalog for Toys R Us per se. And I used to love those, just looking at all those toys and making a wish list of things I wanted, say for Christmas, and I would circle all the toys that I really liked, or I would cut out the Ninja Turtles and stick them in places. Thanks. And so I asked them, is it that? And they said, yes, that's what it is. So I got really excited, and I was like, if I had a Playboy, I would circle all the toys I wanted. And then they just laughed their heads off. But when they started laughing, I could kind of figure that, hey, that's not what a Playboy is it? So after lunchtime during class, I was still curious. So we all had to sit around our teacher while he told a story. At first, I whispered to Jonathan, "What's a Playboy?" And he just shushes me. Shh. I don't take very well to the shush, and I say a little bit louder, "What's a Playboy?" And he just looks at me. So finally, I don't care that the teacher's reading. I just say, "What's a Playboy?" The teacher was reading the story, looks up at me, just kind of looks for a little while, a little bit awkwardly, and then goes back to the story. Yeah. I didn't find out what a Playboy was until I went back home and asked my mother. Yeah. Embarrassing. Yes, I would go on to look at a Playboy in 6th grade at Jonathan's house. He had one near the end of the year. To be honest, I didn't understand what was his big fascination with it. I did not feel anything. I was a bit disgusted, but I didn't say anything. I think Jonathan got it after a little while that I really wasn't interested.